Hello everyone, this is Spartacus, and in this video we're going into the history of Spartacus, the Thracian gladiator who led the biggest slave rebellion against Rome in its history. There are a few stories about the early life of Spartacus, but all agree that he was born as a Thracian. One story says that he had once served as a soldier with the Romans, but had since been a prisoner and sold as a gladiator. Another one says that he was a Thracian mercenary serving as a Roman soldier, but that he had deserted and became enslaved. Afterwards, in consideration of his strength, the Romans made him a gladiator. Plutarch also said that Spartacus' wife, who was a prophetess, was also taken as a slave. The name Spartacus actually came from a line of Thracian kings, from which 5 out of 20 kings had the name. After his enslavement in the legions, Spartacus was taken to a gladiator school belonging to a man named Betiatus in the city of Capua in Italy. It is believed that he was a heavyweight gladiator called a myrmilio. These gladiators carried a large rectangular shield with a sword, usually the gladius. Although due to Spartacus being Thracian, some believe he actually may have used a sword called the Sika, which is curved at the end. In 73 BC, Spartacus was among a group of gladiators plotting an escape. There were roughly 70 slaves involved in the plot. Though they were few in number, the slaves got into the kitchen and seized the utensils. They then fought their way free from the gladiator school, taking control of several wagons of gladiator weapons and armour. The escaped slaves defeated any soldiers sent after them, then plundered the region surrounding the city of Capua. They managed to recruit many other slaves into their ranks and eventually retired to a more defensible position on Mount Vesuvius. Once they were free from Capua, the escaped gladiators and slaves chose Spartacus and 2 Gallic slaves, Crixus and Oenomaus, as their leaders. The response of the Romans was hindered by the absence of the Roman legions, who were engaged in fighting a revolt currently happening in Hispania and the Third Mithriatic War. It also didn't help that the Romans at first considered Spartacus' rebellion to be more of a policing matter instead of an actual war. Rome did not dispatch a regular legion, but instead a militia that was picked up in haste and at random under the command of the praetor Gaius Claudius Glaber. He then besieged Spartacus and his camp on Mount Vesuvius, blocking the only known way down, hoping that starvation would force Spartacus to surrender. Instead, they were taken by surprise when Spartacus used ropes made out of vines to climb down the steep side of the volcano with his men and attack the unfortified Roman camp in the rear, killing most of the militia. A second expedition, under the command of the praetor Publius Favinius, was then dispatched against Spartacus. For some reason, Favinius decided to split his forces under the command of 2 others named Furius and Cosinius. Plutarch does mention that Furius commanded around 2,000 men, but neither the strength of the remaining forces nor whether the expedition was composed of militia or legions appears to be known. All of these forces were also defeated by the army of Spartacus. Favinius was nearly captured and Cosinius was killed. The equipment of the Roman expedition was also taken by the slaves. Because of these victories, more and more slaves flocked to Spartacus' rebellion, including herdsmen and shepherds, increasing their ranks to around 70,000 men. At its height, Spartacus' army included many different peoples, including Celts, Gauls and others. Even some legion veterans joined his ranks due to the previous social war. Many of the slaves that joined Spartacus were from the countryside. These slaves lived a life that better prepared them to fight in Spartacus' army, compared to urban slaves, which were more used to a city life. Though many of the rebels lacked military training, they were able to make use of available local materials and unusual tactics against the disciplined Roman armies. Spartacus' army spent the winter of 73 to 72 BC training, arming and equipping their new recruits, while also expanding their raiding territory to include 4 more towns. The victories did not come without cost though. During this time, one of their leaders, Oenomaus, was lost, most likely in battle. In the spring of 72 BC, the rebels left their winter encampments and began to move north. At the same time, the Roman Senate, being alarmed by the size of Spartacus' revolt and the defeat of the praetorian armies of Glaber and Favinius, dispatched 2 consular legions. The 2 legions were at first successful and managed to defeat a group of 30,000 rebels under the command of Crixus near Mount Gaganus. Crixus was also killed in this battle. The 2 legions were then later defeated by Spartacus. Although, to note, this part of history is recorded significantly differently by Appian and Plutarch. Some of you may remember this part from my Marcus Crassus video. Alarmed at the continued threat posed by Spartacus, the Senate charged Marcus Crassus, the wealthiest man in Rome and the only volunteer for the position, with ending the rebellion. Crassus was in charge of 8 legions, which was around 40,000 trained Roman soldiers. Crassus treated these legions with harsh discipline, reviving the practice of decimation, in which 1 of every 10 men were slain. This made his soldiers fear him more than the enemy. Spartacus and his followers, who for unclear reasons had retreated to the south of Italy, moved north again in early 71 BC. Crassus deployed 6 of his legions on the borders of the region and sent his legate with legions to maneuver behind Spartacus. The legate was ordered to not engage Spartacus, but instead he did attack at a seemingly opportune moment but was defeated. Despite this, Crassus engaged Spartacus' forces and defeated him, killing around 6,000 rebels. This forced Spartacus to retreat further south through Lucania to the Straits of Messina. By the end of 71 BC, Spartacus encamped in Rhegium near the Strait of Messina. According to Plutarch, Spartacus made a deal with Sicilian pirates to transport him and around 2,000 of his men to Sicily. Once in Sicily, Spartacus intended on gathering reinforcements by starting slave revolts. However, he was betrayed by the pirates, who had taken payment and then abandoned the rebels. Some sources mention that there were attempts by the rebels to build a ship themselves to escape, but Crassus took measures to ensure the rebels were unable to cross to Sicily. Spartacus' army was then cut off from their supplies after Crassus had built fortifications across Rhegium. At this time, the legions of Pompey returned from Hispania and were ordered by the Senate to go help Crassus. Spartacus, hearing of Pompey's involvement, tried making a truce with Crassus. When Crassus refused, Spartacus and his army broke through the Roman fortifications and headed to Brundisium, with the Romans in pursuit. The Roman legions managed to catch a portion of the rebels separated from the main army and ended up killing around 12,300 rebels. Discipline amongst Spartacus' forces was breaking down as small groups independently attacked the legions. Because of this, Spartacus turned his forces around and used his entire strength against the legions in a last stand, in which the rebels were completely defeated, with the vast majority of them being killed on the battlefield. Ancient historians also state that it was this battle at Silarius River where Spartacus was killed, but his body was never found. As to what happened to the survivors, 6,000 of the slaves were captured and crucified by Crassus along the Via Appia as a warning to any slave that would consider rising up against Rome. As to Spartacus' motives on his rebellion, classical historians are divided. Some saying that Spartacus wanted to escape into Gaul and disperse his men, others saying that he wanted to attack Rome itself. Plutarch states that Spartacus likely didn't continue on to Gaul as some of his men wanted to plunder Italy rather than escape over the Alps. Another interesting small fact, in modern times Spartacus became an icon for communists. Karl Marx listed Spartacus as one of his heroes and described him as the most splendid fellow in the whole of ancient history, and a great general, noble character, real representative of the ancient working class. Thanks for watching everyone, remember to subscribe to me as more videos will be coming out soon.